I never should have volunteered to drive us home. The morning sky had been that perfect, deceptive shade of autumn blue, clear, crisp, and promising smooth roads all the way back to the city. I'd packed my exact outfit for a seamless transition from lakeside retreat to Monday's boardroom. A silk blouse pressed to perfection, a slim pencil skirt, and my most reliable heels. I even rehearsed my final slide deck on the passenger seat, convinced no obstacle could throw me off. Behind me, in the rented SUV, sat Charlotte Reynolds, our regional director and the woman I both admired and feared in equal measure. She'd battled insomnia all night, crafting our pitch for the new client, and graciously insisted I take the wheel so she could close her eyes for a bit. I'd agreed with a confident nod. What could possibly go wrong? By mile 47, the 4-lane highway had shrunk into a winding ribbon of asphalt flanked by towering pines. The sun dipped lower, shadowing the forest floor in muted gold. That's when I heard it, the sickening metallic rasp of a nail embedding itself in my front tire. My chest constricted and the SUV veered as I fumbled to maintain control. With a quick tap on the brakes, I guided us onto the shoulder, heart hammering so fiercely I expected Charlotte to hear it through the soundproof glass. "Everything okay back there?" she called, voice muffled by closing her laptop. I forced a calmness I didn't feel. I think I've got a flat." My knees felt weak as I slipped out of the driver's seat into the gathering dusk. The air was colder than I'd expected, stripping warmth from my cheeks in seconds. "No signal," I muttered, pressing my phone screen to life. Of course. The map stuttered, showing an endless grid of gray where roads should be, a tiny spinning wheel mocking my helplessness. Summoning what remained of my composure, I hit the Bluetooth icon. "Charlotte," I said into the flat line of static. "I've got a flat, no cell service. I'm on a back road." She was out of the SUV before I could apologize. I heard her hurry behind me, her boots crunching the gravel. She knelt at the wheel as I dug through the trunk, uncoiling the spare tire and jack. Moonlight glimmered off her dark hair, wind-brushed and strangely soft against her structured blazer. "Here," she said, passing me the lug wrench. "Let me." Her hands moved expertly, loosen, lift, replace, every motion precise. The forest around us fell silent as if it too held its breath. I found myself watching her in that hush, awed by her calm authority in a situation I'd have panicked over. Once the spare sat snug and the last lug nut clicked tight, Charlotte straightened. Her blazer was dusted with dirt, yet she wore that faint, triumphant smile she reserved for closing deals. "There," she said, brushing her hands together, like it was never a problem. "Thank you," I whispered, voice thick. I offered her a travel mug, coffee, black and steaming, my own attempt at heroism. She accepted it and inhaled deeply, closing her eyes. "Perfect," she murmured. We slid back in and continued through the forest, headlights carving paths through thickening fog. Our convoy of 2 vehicles held an odd intimacy. Beam lights converging, tires swishing rainwater, engines rumbling in tandem. Neither of us spoke for miles, the only sound our own thoughts filling the spaces between rain-tapped windows. Eventually, Charlotte's GPS flickered back to life, guiding us to the Pinecone Diner. A single-story brick building, its neon sign half-lit, the glow refracted by dripping eaves. Rain plastered the windows, and a single lantern over the door buzzed in the wind. We parked side by side and hurried inside, shedding coats that momentarily revealed the exhaustion etched on both our faces. Inside, the diner was an oasis of warmth and bright linoleum. Wall clocks ticked in unison above red vinyl booths, and vintage photos of local harvests hung crookedly on the walls. We settled into a corner booth. Charlotte draped her blazer around my shoulders like a protective shawl. The cook, a wiry man with a stained apron, tipped his cap. "Coffee, grilled cheese?" he asked, voice as worn as the vinyl itself. "I'll have both," Charlotte said, sliding onto the bench with practiced ease. I followed suit, letting the diner's comfort seep into my bones. We sipped coffee that tasted pure and uncomplicated, the bitterness grounding me. Charlotte leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You handled that flat like a pro," she said, tone warm but with a hint of teasing. "I don't think most people would have stayed as calm." I shrugged. Tasting the edge of cheese-laced bread, I panicked at first, I admitted. "But you make it look easy," her gaze softened. "Only because I've done it 100 times over." She paused, studying me. "But tonight it was a team effort." The warmth in her eyes wasn't corporate politeness. It was genuine appreciation, an acknowledgement I'd longed for but never thought to hear. My heart fluttered, and I busied myself with my sandwich, the bread's crust cracking satisfyingly beneath my teeth. We traded stories, childhood road trips that ended in puddle-jumping rainstorms, first solo drives that ended in wrong turns and laughter, the small triumphs and colossal flops that shaped who we were. Outside, the storm battered the windows, a wild applause for our unplanned camaraderie. An hour later, the diner's rusty clock chimed 11. We lingered over the last dregs of coffee, reluctant to leave this cozy cocoon. Charlotte checked her watch. "We should try the Pinewood Inn," she said, nodding toward the weather-beaten sign next door. The wind assaulted us on the walk-over, an icy reminder of how far we were from any help. The inn's lobby was silent except for the hum of a single lamp. The front desk clerk looked as startled to see us as we were to be there. "Only one room left," she said, voice quavering. "Heater works, no Wi-Fi or TV." Charlotte slid her eyes to mine and then back to the clerk. "We'll take it," she said, placing 2 crumpled 20s on the counter. Up a narrow staircase, the hallway's frayed carpet swallowed our footsteps. The door to room 7 creaked open to reveal 2 twin beds, an oil heater clicking in the corner, and wallpaper peeling like aged bark. A faded floral comforter covered each mattress. A single curtained window faced the wind-whipped pines. I set down my bag with a hollow thud and rubbed my arms against the sudden chill. Charlotte kicked off her boots, smoothing down the bedspread. "Cozy," I said, stifling a laugh. "An adventure," she corrected, grin tugging at her lips. I crossed to the small kitchenette, discovering a stubby Mr. Coffee machine and chip cups. I found 2 sugar packets and boiled water in an electric kettle that wheezed like an old man. When the coffee gurgled to life, I poured us steaming mugs. We sat on the twin beds, backs against separate headboards, legs dangling over the sides. Our shoulders nearly touched between the narrow gap. "This feels oddly intimate," I said, cradling the mug. Charlotte nodded, eyes reflecting the lamp's warm glow. "Unexpected but nice." We sipped in companionable silence, the hush thick with unspoken things. The storm's howl faded into the night as we shared confidences neither of us had anticipated revealing. She told me about losing her first job and starting over. I confessed my fear of failure, of never feeling enough outside her shadow of excellence. Every revelation drew us closer, the professional facade slipping away layer by layer. At some point, the overhead lamp flickered. We looked up, startled, and the room dimmed. The heater clanked once, then clicked to life again, filling the hush with a comforting rhythm. Charlotte set down her mug. "You should sleep," she said softly. "We'll be back on the highway by dawn." I reached for her hand. "I don't want this night to end." She met my eyes, honest, tender. "Me neither." She moved across the gap so that her knees brushed mine. I leaned forward, impulsive. Our lips met in a slow, cautious brush, a question posed and answered on the crown of midnight. The kiss deepened with shared relief and curiosity, our reservation melting like snow in the furnace of the heater. We parted only when the hush became too loud. Charlotte rested her forehead against mine. "I didn't expect this," she whispered, voice tremulous. "Neither did I breathed, tracing her jaw. "But I'm glad." She traced my collarbone, fingers warm against silk. "Can I stay?" My heart flared. "Yes." She slid into the bed beside me, tucking the quilt around us both. The twin beds merged into one intimate space. Bodies turned toward each other, breaths mingling. Outside, the storm diminished to a hush. I fell asleep in Charlotte's arms, the hum of the heater and her steady heartbeat lulling me into a sense of home I'd never known was possible. And when dawn's pale light filtered through frost-etched windows, I awoke beneath a soft smile and a gentle touch. "Morning," she said, voice husky. "Morning," I replied, leaning into her warmth. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and golden. We dressed quietly, slipping back into our professional roles, even as our hearts held the promise of something far more real. At checkout, Charlotte wrapped an arm around my waist. "Ready for the real summit?" she asked. I grinned, heart light. "Let's take it on together." And as we stepped into the sunrise, I knew that no amount of roadblocks, or storms, could keep me from the path we'd found in that roadside inn, nor the woman I'd discovered in Charlotte's eyes.